Recording in progress.
can start, Masi.
Yes, Chair. Good morning.
Can you then flight the agenda?
Is it visible, Chair?
Yes. Thank you so much. Once more, good morning to all colleagues in the platform. And let's start our meeting. And let me then welcome everyone in this meeting today. And greetings to the Deputy Minister, if she's in the platform, and also the chair of the PSC, and also the DG, and all colleagues. You are all welcome to this meeting, and honorable members. Today, I think on the apologies, the only apology today, because it's Wednesday, is the apology of the minister. And obvious, if the minister is not here, the deputy minister always attend the meetings. And honorable members and colleagues, I want also to say a happy birthday to the DG, Ms. Yoli Somakasi. And I saw in some platforms that today is her birthday. And hoping that this meeting will be the shortest meeting so that she goes and enjoy herself. Honorable members, today we've invited the PSC and obvious the department. The PSC will only present on the envisaged monitoring and oversight tool for all recruitments in the public service as per our budgetary review and recommendations report of October 2023. And honorable members and colleagues, this is part of ensuring accountability on the committee recommendations in order to establish whether what was proposed as recommendations has been achieved or not, and understanding the fact that at least now we're at the end of our 6th administration. And obvious that then there will be a presentation from the Department of Public Service and Administration on the draft digital government policy framework with the aim of improving efficiency of government services. And therefore, honorable members and colleagues, I will hand over to the Deputy Minister if he's here. Honorable Kana Pilani Majake. I don't see her in the platform, Masi. If not, I will quickly then hand over to the Public Service Commission because I can see she's not in the platform. And thank you very much, honorable members and colleagues.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Much appreciated. I must indicate that on the platform, we do have the Chairperson of the Public Service Commission, Professor Sumadoda Fikeni. We are accompanied by the acting DG, Ms. Arin Matenjwa, and we also have Dr. Sidibe, who will be doing the presentation on our behalf. Perhaps I should afford the Chairperson an opportunity just to indicate what we are about to before I commence with the presentation. With your permission, Chairperson.
No, thank you very much, Commissioner. In fact, I'm handing over to the chair. I can't see everyone in this platform. I'm using another gadget. The chair of the PC can then take over.
I don't seem to see him, Chair, but I'll proceed. I'm also accompanied by Commissioner Magaman.
Commissioner, through you, Chairperson. This is Commissioner Tugusam Gorma from the Public Service Commission. And I am happy to introduce the presentation of the PSC on behalf of the PSC in the absence of the Chairperson. Through you, Chairperson.
No, thank you very much, Deputy Chair, Commissioner Zuki.
Yes, thank you very much. And thank you very much also to you, Commissioner Mavuso, for leading our delegation. Otherwise, chairperson and members of the portfolio committee, ours is to provide a report to the portfolio committee on the monitoring and evaluation tools that we use to monitor recruitment in the public service. And I will hand over to Commissioner Mavuso as well as DG Sedibe to make the presentation on behalf of the PSC. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Just to proceed, I'm also accompanied by Commissioner Magaman, who is also on the platform here. I want to give a brief synopsis of what transpired. In fact, the report in front of the portfolio committee and the presentation that has been prepared emanates from the submission on the budgetary review and recommendation report in relation to the vote 12 of the Public Service Commission annual report for the year 2022-2023, which took place on the 18th of October. Arising out of that portfolio committee, we actually noted that the committee then indicated that it was worthy that the Public Service Commission should embark on the exercise to develop a monitoring and oversight tool to monitor recruitment processes undertaken by various departments within the public service. We did, of course, take note of that and we embarked on the exercise. I must indicate right up front, Chairperson, that in the main, this would have been the responsibility of the Department of Public Service and Administration. But given the fact that we have a collegial relationship, a very collaborative interaction, we actually engaged with the department to say that, can we map a way forward as to how this is going to unfold without necessarily crossing wires and creating unnecessary tensions. But because that collegial relationship exists, we then agreed that we should take charge of the process and make sure that this submission is presented to yourselves. As you can actually see, Chairperson, this was a collaborative effort, and I will then hand over to DG Sedibe to do the presentation, just to give the sense of what transpired and how we arrived at where we are today. Thank you very much. Over to DG Sedibe.
Good morning, members, commissioners, colleagues. I'm trying to share here. Just give me a minute.
We seem to be having some technical glitches. Is the Secretariat may be able to flag the presentation on our behalf so that we can take it from there in order to be able to save time. While saying that, I'm also accompanied by Commissioner Buckers, Commissioner Magaman, and Commissioner Ngwenya. So we do have a strong delegation to this meeting because we do believe that it's a very important engagement we're going to have. Yes, we can see the screen. Thanks, DDG. You may proceed.
Thank you very much. If I speak a little bit faster or there's a delay, it looks like my system is a bit slow. As I indicated, thanks for the opportunity, members of the Portfolio Committee, commissioners present, as well as all other colleagues. Briefly, in our presentation, we will give a bit of background, our mandate, which is clearly understood. We will run over it quickly, then deal with the substance of the engagements between the PSC and the DPSA, as well as work that is underway by the DPSA that is responding to this particular assignment, and then we conclude. As indicated by the chairperson and commissioner, this presentation is a response to a decision made during the budgetary review a meeting wherein there was a request that the PSC should develop a monitoring and oversight tool to deal with recruitment processes undertaken by various government departments, and that such tools should have various indicators to scrutinize and to test the validity of the appointments made on an annual basis. So this is the substance of the detail, and I hope it will be clear why we conclude the presentation the way we will be later on. So in an attempt to understand what was required, we did have an engagement with the DPSA to try to understand where our mandate starts and ends, as well as where theirs end, and to properly locate the request that was raised through the budgetary review process. And in those engagements, members, our focus was to try to make sure that there is clarity on how PSC monitors, as well as how DPSA monitors HR M&D processes in the public service, of which recruitment and selection is just one of those many HR M&D processes that departments are responsible for. In a nutshell, the PSC conducts oversight through research, investigations, inspections, as well as advocacy in the interest of maintaining an effective and efficient public administration. We don't do this by checking what departments are doing every day or to check each and every decision, but we look at issues at a high level, except in instances where there is a particular complaint or grievance, and we zoom into the specifics through our investigations and inspections. So the research that we do, especially in the areas of recruitment and selection, if we can stick to that, we do a lot of research, rapid assessments on selected areas based on issues that are being raised in the portfolio committee, the media, and so forth, as well as the responses that we receive from departments in terms of the challenges and or successes of implementing particular policies and directives. And then we obviously do investigations on own accord if there are issues that the PSC thinks need to be dealt with in depth. And we also deal with those investigations when, like I indicated, there are grievances or complaints. The difference between the research and the investigations is that in the research space, we look at the systems and the processes at the high level, and we deal with policy recommendations and systems and structures. Whereas in the investigations, where we zoom into a particular institution or a particular unit or groups of individuals based on the nature of the issue, is that the investigation will come up with findings that are largely dealing with particular persons and the actions that must be taken based on what the findings are. And yes, out of investigations, sometimes we do make policy recommendations, especially if the investigations from different areas allude to similar challenges from a range of institutions. And then the inspections. With inspections, the PSC does have a focused intervention. If it is within the schooling area, we do inspections there, but in selected institutions, if it is for particular processes or procedures, such as the distribution of textbooks or scholar transport, the focus of the inspections is on that. And in the work that we do around inspections, we are looking at issues of service delivery, the experiences of the public, the processes and the procedures, and how those can be enhanced to improve service delivery, and what is working best in other areas, so that we use the opportunity as well to try to replicate best practice. So our work is largely high level, but it does not zoom into the details. Like the PSC cannot say Department X is always perfect when they do this. We don't know, because we are not looking at the micro level activities of institutions. So we do support a policy to a greater degree, and our work is in that manner. So based on our discussions with the PSC, the DPSA, and based on our mandate, there was agreement between the two institutions that the development of tools and instruments to monitor compliance related to HR prescripts and practices resides with the policy department, DPSA as the custodian. And we will clarify how they are currently dealing with this task. And so I will skip this particular slide because I think Commissioner Mavuso has alluded to it and I have also addressed it. But what I want to state at a high level is compliance tools and instruments are not always static. They are living documents. They need to evolve as policy, legislation evolves. And we have seen the Public Service Amendment Bill being adopted recently. The DPSA is in the process of reviewing the Human Resource Management and Development Strategy. There is a number of directives that have been issued by the Minister for Public Service and Administration. All of these processes, and yes, the implementation of the framework on professionalization of the public sector is ongoing, and all of these processes and prescripts do have an impact on the types of tools and instruments that need to be put in place. So the DPSA as the policy department, and given the work that they are currently doing, they are already beginning to address this issue of a detailed compliance tool that is largely going to be based on the principles of the fourth industrial revolutions that will allow even institutions to monitor themselves, but it will allow the DPSA to see what is happening in departments. It will also allow the PSC to have rapid access to information instead of always sending requests for information that can easily be updated on a continuous basis and be available live as and when the institutions are updating. But interestingly, members, is that the DPSA on the 6th of March, when they were briefing the portfolio committee about the work that they are doing, they did allude to some of the work that they have already started doing that has an impact on the issue of the monitoring tools, not just for recruitment and selection, but for a range of other practices within the HR M&D space. So to this end, we want to acknowledge as the PSC, because we are engaged on a continuous basis, and when DPSA engages with departments, the PSC is alerted, and we do attend some of these engagements so that we fully understand what is being discussed, and we are also able to make an input on the spot in a proactive manner instead of hoping to come and make input after the fact or to try to criticize what has been put in place after the fact. So they are currently finalizing the HR M&D strategy, and in this particular strategy, they will map out the value chain or the value processes around this, and the review needs to take into account all determinations, circulars, and toolkits. Just to indicate that if we look at the framework on professionalization of the public sector, it does have implications on certain determinations and circulars being rescinded so that they are replaced by circulars that are more aligned with what the framework is saying. And obviously with bargaining council determinations, some of these matters need to go back to the bargaining councils, and the same would apply with toolkits and directives. So they are also in the process of revising the public service regulations to align it with the Public Service Amendment Bill, as well as key aspects emanating from the professionalization framework. And most importantly, they are developing an early warning system which will enable not just the DPSA, but the PSC and other stakeholders to continuously be able to assess or to have access to information that allows us to make determinations on the levels of compliance within departments across the value chain of the HR&M&D space. So the early warning system will put the implementation plan and monitoring of policy at the forefront, and it will provide the minister with business intelligence to act when there are signs of derailment rather than when the problems have already emerged. And that type of intelligence, obviously, based on the work of the PSC, as and when the PSC requires, we will also be able to access. But it is important that the PSC does not seem to be wanting to do this daily monitoring. That is the responsibility of executive authorities and HODs in departments, as well as the responsibility of the key functions within the DPSA. So we think the early warning system will indeed enable departments and the MPSA and everyone else who has an interest in public administration practices to have a quick sense of what is happening in the various departments. And we believe that once this particular system has been established, whether we call it a chapter of the HR&D, but I think DPSA has got a better word for it. Once it has been established, it will be easy to update it as and when there are policy changes. But in addition, the DPSA is also working with other institutions like the DPME to make sure that the changes that are happening in the HR&D space, they also find expression in other frameworks that the DPME is responsible for. For an example, the PMDS for HOD, which largely is overseen currently by the DPME, the DPSA is engaging with them to make sure that key aspects of the professionalization framework and the amendments that have been made through the Public Service Amendment Bill are also incorporated into the PMDS for HODs. So there is a lot of activity that is happening, not just within the domain of the DPSA, but other sister institutions, but the DPSA remains the custodian for the HR&D. And interestingly, members, is that the Auditor General has been engaging with the minister and the heads of the institutions within this portfolio and other portfolios to say they will be monitoring the extent of implementation of the professionalization framework by all departments, especially following the release of the directive by the Minister for Public Service and Administration. So clearly, the focus that the AG is also placing on this area, it also puts pressure on the portfolio to make sure that all the commitments that have been communicated in terms of what is happening or what we need to do to implement the framework and to implement the amendments that were recently approved with the various bills, that we actually act on that, because there will be not just internal monitoring by DPSA as well as oversight by the PSC, but there will also be a level of audit by the AG. So in conclusion, members, what we are saying as the PSC is that we have an obligation to ensure that resources are used effectively and efficiently. And this is an obligation that is shared by all institutions because it emanates from the constitutional values and principles. And in doing this, as the PSC, we have the responsibility to alert the portfolio committee on the work that is currently happening that resides within one of the sister institutions within the portfolio, so that it becomes clearer in the future when we say the DPSA is better positioned to address the portfolio committee on the decision that was taken through the budget review process. However, as the PSC, we will continue to conduct macro level monitoring through research, as part of our oversight mandate. We do more than research, like I indicated. We also do inspections, investigations, advocacy, and so forth. But I think in relation to the task that was assigned to us at the time, that there is an understanding that that particular task rightly falls within the domain of the DPSA. However, as the PSC, because we are engaging with what all departments are doing, we have oversight over the DPSA. We work very closely with them because our spaces of operations are two sides of the same coin, but we also have oversight over the DPSA. And it is on that basis that we are aware of what the DPSA is doing. We therefore want to request the portfolio committee to allow the DPSA to continue with the development of the early warning system as it encompasses issues of recruitment and selection. And in the near future, I'm not sure what is that future, but in the near future, then DPSA will be able to provide progress on where the early warning system is at and its deployment across the whole public service. That is the end of our presentation. Just the little table there. The PSC, we are on the orange. I think it's orange side, but somewhere there at the top, together with a range of other institutions. And the black space, this is where departments and the DPSA are. And this is where the request largely is focusing on, but we will do these other types of oversight monitoring as and when we shift focus on a yearly basis. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, DDG. And over to you, Chairperson, just to indicate that the Chairperson of the Public Service Commission, Professor Somato Tafikin, is also on the platform. He just joined us. In fact, he joined us a few minutes ago. We do have a very full complement of the delegation that came to this portfolio committee. On that note, thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much to the PSC. I'm now handing over to the DG and then the presentation of the department, and then we'll deliberate to the two reports. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson, and good morning to the honorable members. I just want to invite Chairperson Mr. Zaid Abubakar, who is our acting chief director for the a branch that deals with matters related to digital policy, DPSA. With your permission, Chair, if I may hand over to him.
Good morning, Chairperson and honorable members. And DG, with your permission, we have the project manager responsible for the policy framework, Mr. Nzimani, who will be leading us in the presentation. Nico.
Good morning, honorable members. Good morning, Minister, Deputy Minister, DG, and other members of the executive and colleagues present. I will be presenting on the draft digital government policy framework as it has been stated. As a start, I think I have a challenge with connection, Chair, but I will continue anyway. The focus of my presentation will be mainly on giving background around e-government. I will highlight some of the challenges that are in place in as far as the e-government implementation is concerned. I will present the overall proposals that we are making in as far as policies are concerned, basing them on the framework of e-government as recommended by the OECD. and then I will highlight some of the priority areas that are we have identified for the purpose of immediate implementation. The presentation obviously is to give members the brief of what we have been doing as far as digital government policy framework is concerned. Now, as a background, the concept of e-government really was given impetus in 1998 when the Presidential Commission on the Transformation of the Public Service made recommendations on what interventions should be put in place to transform the public service. As far as ICT is concerned, the critical interventions that were mentioned was the need for establishment of the required agency, a SITA, the establishment of the Office of the Chief Information Officer, the establishment of the role of the GTO member, which is the information officer in different departments, and a council of these officers who will work collaboratively to exchange ideas and to also collaborate in implementing some of the government ICT programs. And so after that, there was also work done by the Department of Public Service and Administration to take forward the recommendations of the Presidential Review Commission. Of importance was the policy that related to the e-government, which then included other norms and standards that I will refer to later on. Leapfrogging forward to 2017, the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies established a strategy which was aimed at basically guiding the digital transformation of the public service in South Africa. Subsequently, there was work done in as far as that is concerned. For example, there was a portal created by the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies working with SITA, which is an integration of all the e-services that government is offering. And this portal continues to operate. And in addition, there were norms and standards that the DPSA also put in place, which are also currently being published, but some of whom were also published in 2022. Going to the problem statement. Chair, let me just say, Chair, I'm struggling with the slides. I don't know if you'd allow me to stop sharing.
We can see your slides are not moving, but however, the members, they've got the presentation.
Oh, okay.
But for the people of South Africa, they must see the presentation. I'm not sure why it's not moving. Yes, as honorable members, we do have the presentation, but I'm worried about our Atlantica and the people of South Africa who are following this portfolio committee.
Chairperson, may I suggest that if Mr. Ntimani is Chairperson, if Mr. Ntimani is struggling, may I suggest I take over and with connectivity, can I take over with your permission, Chairperson?
Yes, Mr. Zaid, thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. Allow me to share my screen. I hope this is visible and it's moving, Chairperson.
Thank you so much. It's moving,
Yes.
Mr. Zaid.
I apologize for that, Chairperson. I think when Mr. Nsamani was giving us an overview of what's happened in the past in terms of policy work and strategy work in the space of e-government or digitalization as it's come to be known now. And so I think we paused then at the establishment of the Interministerial Committee on Digital Government that's been established in 2024 by the President, chaired by the Minister for Digital Communications and Technologies, and also attended, and part of that IMC is our Minister for Public Service and Administration, also the Minister of Finance. So it's quite positive that we now have an IMC that focuses on digital government and how all the different role players, including the DPSA and DCDT and CETA, can come together to further the agenda. Chair, we speak a little bit about, while we speak about the policies that existed in the past, it's important to understand the progress that we've made towards that. Since 2012, of course, we have, and it's no small feat, that we have a central government network that's been established in the State IT Agency. The Chair, while we have connectivity challenges at the coalface in terms of rural areas, we can say that we do have a fairly stable and sophisticated central government network where all departments connect and access common applications. We have implemented norms and standards. Some I can speak about are the minimum interoperability standards, the minimum information security standards, the corporate governance of ICT policy framework, and some others. Chair, there's been progress from a digital platform perspective for some time now, including the e-Home Affairs, e-Natus, e-filing with SARS, u-filing with the Department of Labor. We have a centralized e-services portal. While it is still new and services are being taken up every day, we do have a centralized e-services portal where citizens can log in. I think the last we spoke about it, Chair, in terms of the e-services portal, and we measured and looked at the number of citizens that access, I think the number goes in excess of 1 million accesses or people that have accessed the portal or looked at the portal. So that's quite positive. In provinces, we have some provinces, we can talk about the Western Cape, that's moved quite far ahead in the digitalization agenda. They have back-end systems to look at matters of HR and look at matters of leave and look at matters of internal efficiencies. And they also have quite a sophisticated broadband network. We are seeing in the Eastern Cape that the broadband is being deployed and there are more and more applications being developed. In KZN, they have again looked at IT systems and deployed digital systems to take care of some of the back-end systems. In provinces, you will appreciate, Chair, that provinces typically do a lot of coordination, and so that those are the kinds of systems that they would have in place. And we have national departments that have, to a certain extent, deployed some level of digitization. Of course, there are challenges, and we're not saying that we are there, but what the message out of the slide, Chair, is that there has been progress towards digitalization over the years, and it's something that we continue to build capacity and capability and maturity on. I would also mention, Chair, that the South African government has been able to respond during COVID-19. If you think about how public servants were able to continue to work, particularly in the back office, online meetings, the use of tools like Zoom and Teams, we've responded quite well in terms of doing some of that. Of course, we're not where we need to be. Chair, while we talk about what we've achieved, of course, we have to reflect on some of the challenges that remain. And those challenges, while they're listed there, I'll just mention some of them. I think the issue of digital skills is something that we always have to focus on. Chair, in the public service itself, we have 1.2 million public servants. 0.3% of those are officials that work directly in the technology space, and that ratio is far too low. And as a result, we struggle with capacity in departments to be able to deploy new technology, to be able to support that technology. And so there is perhaps an over-reliance on service providers to come in and assist government with technology skills. We are very aware of that. And in the strategy, we look at, in the policy framework, we look at how we can then both leverage on existing digital skills programs, like the DCDT have a digital skills strategy, We need to leverage off that and look at how government can then use that to create capacity. Chair, the high cost of ICT goods and services in the country, and I do believe that as the public service, we've not been able to leverage off our buying power and make sure that we, as the biggest consumer of single consumer of ICT goods in the country, that we are able to get the best price. It's a challenge in terms of the procurement model, and we are in discussions with CETA, ongoing discussions with CETA, with the GTOs or the CIOs from individual departments, and with the DCDT to look at ways of improving in our procurement of ICT goods and services, because we must be able to get these goods and services at the best price, given that the kind of consumer that we are in the industry. Chair, funding for digital initiatives is constantly and always a problem linked to the funding challenges that we are having as a whole in government. So it becomes a case of having to compete for funds alongside all of the other priorities. The case that we make in terms of the digital government policy framework, Chair, is that the digital technologies are going to give us more efficiencies, are going to be more cost effective in the long run in terms of when we weigh it against traditional methods of delivering services. Chair, the lack of data management practices is a problem across government. We've done an exercise we've done a maturity assessment for sampling some departments across the public service. The story is not a good story that we can tell in terms of the practices that departments have in managing their data, securing their data, classifying their data. And so we've looked at ways that we can, in the short term, improve that, but long term, we need to have policies and strategies in place to look at how we can improve data management. That includes data sharing, et cetera, et cetera. Chair, the last one that I'll speak to is the disjointed design of business processes within and between government departments. Chair, the technology and the benefit of the technology will rely on integrated business processes. That's the best way that we can start to integrate our services. And we do find that we do have disjointed services at the moment, meaning that each government department delivers its services in its own unique way. And so from a citizen perspective, it does create a challenge in that when you go to each department, you have to understand their unique way of delivering that service. You also have to then identify yourself uniquely in different departments, and it does become a challenge for the citizen. We are one government, and we should be able to deliver services in an integrated manner where it makes sense to do so. So between home affairs, health, education, there are life cycles that are well known around, whether it's a learner life cycle from the time that the learner enters into grade R to the time that the learner continuously learns in terms of higher education and other learning. So those business processes must be joined up, they must be integrated. And so from a technology perspective, it poses a challenge, but it also poses an opportunity. Because as we look to fast track, Chair, we then can start to think about how technology can fast track the integration of our services. Chair, that's just a reflection on the challenges. The legislative framework that we have is quite complex and complicated, particularly from an ICT perspective. We have the Public Service Act, we have the ECT Act that's under the stewardship of the DCDT. We have the CETA Act, which currently falls under the DCDT. And of course, PFMA then starts to talk about how we procure IT goods and services. What we do, Chair, in terms of this document, the policy framework, is we take from the different legislation and try to harmonize it. We try to also take from different pieces of different documents that have existed in the past, the ICT white paper, the national ICT white paper, the national e-strategy, the national e-government strategy. So as government, while we do have country strategies in place for e-government and ICT, government being the anchor tenant around these strategies, we need to take the direction from DCDT and bring that into the public service. And so that's what we've done here. And so this is just an illustration of the inputs into the digital government policy framework from a legislative perspective. And of course, Chair, the digital government policy framework, once it's approved, will then give rise to various policies, directives, and strategies of how those individual items will be implemented in the public service. Chair, I want to touch on just briefly the work that's been done, the foundational work from a digitalization perspective. while we can talk about the systems in departments, those systems must be underpinned by foundational elements. And those foundational elements are cybersecurity, they are digital governance, they are data management, and they are risk management or digital risk management. So we in the DPSA have published since 2022 a number of directives. The first one I'll speak about is the use of cloud technologies. And really, this is about providing clear guidance on the adoption and use of cloud. We've been quite bold in the Public Service Chair and honorable members. We've indicated that that departments, before they invest in infrastructure on site, that they should investigate the use of cloud technologies. And this is really to combat the issue, Chair, of government IT infrastructure becoming outdated, government not being able to find the funding to maintain old and outdated infrastructure. And so the refresh cycle is a lengthy cycle, typically in governments across the board. And so cloud makes sense from a government perspective, because it allows private sector to invest in the infrastructure and government to become a consumer. It allows us, Chair, to switch on and switch off services based on need and demand. And that's quite an attractive scenario for in a situation where we have tight fiscal conditions. Chair, from a cybersecurity perspective, we've set the bar in terms of what departments need to be doing to secure their data. It's quite an important fundamental foundational element, and that was published in 2022 as well. And so we are working with departments. We've been doing roadshows, we've been doing awareness sessions to sensitize departments around these directives and to assist departments with the adoption and implementation. Chair, one of the most fundamental ones that I speak about, and the last one on this slide, is the Determination and Directive on Corporate Governance of ICT. And this is about dealing with the issues of IT being siloized in departments themselves. Typically what happens is that departments would look to a CIO or a GTO and say, provide me with the solution, without really taking responsibility for that implementation and for the business process transformation that's required for that solution to be effective. And so the Corporate Governance of ICT Policy Framework then creates that ownership and oversight of IT in departments. And so it's important for branches in departments to be aware of the value of IT and to be able to spend on IT in a manner that adds value to the branch, but also adds value to the greater business. It also allows us to then have integration within departments. Chair, what we see is that within departments, you then have siloized systems, and the Corporate Governance of ICT Policy Framework speaks to the practices that need to exist from a governance perspective, the policies that need to exist in a department, and also the structures that departments must have in order for IT to start to add value. The underlying word that I would use for Corporate Governance of ICT Policy Framework is value management. So when we spend in a department on technology, whatever technology it is, it must add value to the business processes, meaning in our case, the services that those departments deliver to either internally to other departments or to citizens and to businesses. Chair, the Minister for Public Service Administration has approved the Determination and Directive on Knowledge and Data Management, and this directive is meant to deal with the fundamental data issues and how those data issues then translate into knowledge in a department. Very fundamental, as we understand the aging public service, as we understand that people move in and out of the public service, it's important that we are able to capture the institutional knowledge. And so this determination and directive is aimed at taking us from a very basic level to a foundational level and move us further. And there's a roadmap towards that. Chair, coming to the issue of digital government and how it's defined, we adopt the OECD definition to talk about the use of digital technologies as an integrated part of government's modernization strategies. And this is quite important for me that we understand that when we transform government, when we modernize government, we have to be able to do it using digital technologies. And so there's as you can see, the steps there, Chair and honorable members, there are different levels. I would say that the post-digital government level is something that we want to work towards, while we don't want in the policy framework to hold departments back. So those departments that are able, that have funding, that are capable of proceeding must move on to the higher levels. And those higher levels talk about being empathetic in the way that we deliver services, being insights driven, and creating an ecosystem that's orchestrated, both orchestrated internally, but also orchestrated within the cluster, within the sector that they work. And I think there are examples, Chair, of departments that have done that. If we think about SARS and what they've done, working with the banks, to deliver digital platforms, working with other departments. U-filing is one example, Chair, where SARS and the Department of Labor are partnering and creating that ecosystem and that orchestration. So the majority of departments, I think, we are sitting in e-government and possibly even before that, being reactive, being siloized, and being specific process-centric for themselves. Chair, moving on then to talk about the policy framework itself and what it aims to do, we talk about establishing a digital-first mindset. And that means, Chair and honorable members, that when we want to solve a problem in government, when we want to deliver a new service or we want to transform a service, we need to do that with digital first. We need to look first at how technology is going to assist that. In the 4IR era, I don't think anybody at this point will argue that technology is the way ahead. Technology is the way that we can improve. Technology is the way that we can transform. And so we want to embed this digital first mindset in departments, in agencies that promote collaboration and coordination among government entities. And that collaboration, Chair, is only possible through the digitization and digitalization of our processes, digitization of our paper-based documents, in order to meet the strategic objectives of government. Another aim of the policy framework, Chair, is to institutionalize the required governance mechanisms. It's quite an important step, given that we have a decentralized model of deployment of technology. By and large, Chair and honorable members, each department is responsible for its business processes and for its services. And so it's responsible for identifying the technology that it wants to deploy and deploying that. Of course, the question of SITA comes up to say, SITA has been established to look at common systems, and we are in discussions with the DCDT and the policy framework. I'll talk about how the policy framework identifies what common challenges exist and what common platforms must be deployed. Another aim, Chair, is to give direction then to departments on key focus areas. So in the policy framework, we will identify what government should look like and what our policy focus areas should be. And then this will then give direction through specific policies on how departments must then adopt these approaches in delivering services and transforming their organizations. Ultimately, of course, Chair, the aim is to ensure that we improve service delivery to citizens. Chair, I'll move on from that then to just look at a high-level overview of the frame of the policy framework. And what we do is we adopt the OECD framework of 2020 that has essentially 6 pillars. It talks about digital by design. That means we must be citizen-centric when we design our services or we transform our services. It means we must be transparent and interoperable, and we must be inclusive. So digital by design, in terms of the framework, then has a set of policy statements, and that will give rise to specific policy documents that must then guide the specifics of what must happen in departments in the public service to enable digital by design. So to data-driven, data as a fundamental pillar. We must look at the data management policies that need to be put in place. We must invest in data infrastructure. We must promote the use of open data. We must, Chair and honorable members, create analytics capabilities in the public service. And that means it does not only mean that we must have platforms. It also means that we must be able to train our public servants to understand the value of data, to use data in their day-to-day work. Chair, of course, falling in line with that are issues of data privacy and security, and we have quite good legislation, POPIA, around data privacy and security, and we will take from that and we will then translate those into specific policies that must secure government data. And of course, the issue around being data driven is about data sharing. We have 159 national and provincial departments, but each holds onto its specific data sets, and that means that when other departments want to optimize and understand its citizen, it can't understand it in the broader context of the citizen. It has to understand it in its individual context of the department. So sharing agreements are something that is coming through in the policy framework, but must come through in terms of implementation, how we share our data. Chair, government as a platform speaks to really how we can start to create platforms to share technology, to share services. So the e-services platform that I spoke about earlier that's been established by CETA and is being managed through the DCDT is an example of a government platform. It's meant to provide a single platform for citizens to come in and understand the types of services that they require, to be able to look at their profile and understand what government knows about them, to be able to update their information so that individual government departments can consume that data once off. And it's also meant to provide a window into government services. So that's an example of a government platform, but equally so, Chair, another example of a government platform is the government network. So we understand with the 0.3% and the lack of capacity in individual departments that it does not make sense for us to then continue to manage our infrastructure in a siloized way. Departments, Chair, and honorable members cannot attract the best IT skills, do not have the post and the capacity and the funding to hire all of the right technology skills. And so from a policy perspective, from a strategy perspective, it makes sense for us in government to start to think about how we can cluster certain common elements and provide them in a platform manner. And that is where CETA comes in, Chair. Pillar 3 will provide clear direction to CETA on how they need to be structured, how they need to deliver their services, and what government requires of them to do. And I think for the first time, we will be giving really clear marching orders to CETA and through the DCDT, of course, on what government needs. And I think it's important to establish what the needs are as from a government perspective, so that when we talk to our service providers, they are marching to the tune of really the end user, which is us, government departments and public servants, and of course, the citizen in general. Chair, the fourth pillar is being open by default. And this is really about the Open Government Partnership, which is an international initiative of governments coming together to commit to certain principles. South Africa is a founding member of the Open Government Partnership. It talks about being open by default, and that means government must start to share data with citizens, for citizens to use, for citizens to innovate, and for citizens to begin to trust that government is delivering on its mandate. So we talk about sharing agreements again, we talk about open data policies, we talk about open access, we talk about open source, and we talk about public consultation. Of course, Chair, it is understood that we need to be responsible in how we share data. We need to take into account the relevant legislation and privacy of citizens. But I think there is a point of balance. Chair, I can share with you as well that in this space, there's been work that's already happened. For instance, the National Treasury have arising out of the work that's been done and spearheaded by the DPSA in the past, that National Treasury have an open data portal called Vulekamali, which then shares budget information that I know citizens and businesses use to try to understand government spending. I know National Treasury also has a municipal platform where they share municipal data and open data that individuals can use or businesses can use to start to develop applications and to start to use government data for their businesses, but also to keep government in check in terms of oversight. So a very exciting space, Pillar 4, Chair. Pillar 5, is about being user-driven. And that means, Chair, essentially, that we must be able to talk to our people when we design our platforms, when we design our services. We must be able to give citizens, when we make digital technologies available, the ability to provide feedback. It must also deal with digital accessibility. And so when we look at the government platforms that have been designed in the past and will continue to be designed in the future, they must be user-driven. And so this pillar, Chair, will guide us on the kinds of policies that we need to develop that guide how technology is deployed to improve the engagement with citizens. One of the fundamental elements, Chair, in this pillar is around co-creation, and that means that when we design a platform or a new service, or even review an existing service, that we must be able to bring citizens together with us to tell us how they would want to consume these services, and not necessarily think of that government as officials, we know all the answers, and we understand what citizens need. Chair, the last pillar then is about being proactive, and this is about using trends and using data to be proactive and to almost try to foresee the kinds of challenges that citizens would find in terms of the services. It's also about intervening early. So data can assist us, Chair, as government to intervene early in the problems. We can see trends, we can see certain, if we take the issue of service delivery protests, there are somewhere along the line, government officials have data or have an understanding of the challenges that are being experienced. And so once we start to use proactiveness and we start to use innovation and trends using data, we can start to deal with the issue of service delivery protests before they happen, and start to focus our resources in places to stop these protests from happening. Of course, Chair, being proactive is also about being experimentational in our approach. And I think this is about innovation, and this is about making sure that public servants are able to experiment in a secure manner and not feel threatened that they are going to lose their job if they innovate or they experiment, and if they dream about how services can be delivered in a better way. So, Chair, that's the broad frame of the policy framework. Everything else will stem from that. We'll develop specific policies arising out of these 6 pillars. And really, yeah, I think I've spoken enough about this. Let me move, Chair. Chair, you will also keep me honest in terms of time. The next slide, the policy framework, I've spoken about the 6 dimensions. This slide really is just meant to expand on that a little bit, so I will skip it. And then let me talk about the outcome of developing the policy framework is really about delivering services to citizens. And so, again, let me just talk about the design of services in collaboration with citizens, the integration of platforms, and I've spoken about e-services and one-stop shops. Chair, we know about Tusong centers. What we've not been able to do is to infuse technology into those Tusong centers. And that has been really because of the slow progress of digitalization of individual services. But ideally, Chair, we want to look at having one-stop shops, whether they be online, whether they be mobile, whether they be physical. And we want to start to look at how we can popularize the e-services portal, but also start to get more and more government departments to use the portal. And then, of course, the issues of applications and super apps. Chair, we are starting to see many departments developing their own individual apps. I think most departments or service delivery departments are starting to think about apps. But of course, it doesn't help the citizen having to download 159, if not more, government apps to do individual things. And so this concept of a super app is being championed by the policy framework. As a citizen, as a business, I should be able to come to a one government app. It should be able to reckon, I should be able to register on it and have that as a gateway to all of my information and all of the services that I can consume. So very fundamental principle about coming back to citizen convenience. The government super app is something that we will champion in the policy framework, in at least identifying, Chair, that the concept and the idea, and identifying who should drive it forward and when it should be driven and how high it should be driven. The concept of whole of government systems, Chair, just using learning management as an example here, we want to start to think about how we can create these learning management systems for employees in the public service. And so this will allow us to then to make sure that we can continuously update public service skills, whether formally or informally, Chair. I think there's also this question. I subscribe to the University of YouTube in terms of my own learning. I think we all do in terms of trying to understand how to do certain things in our lives, both professionally and privately in our spaces. And more technology companies are starting to use these platforms, and technology specialists are starting to use these platforms to teach and to share knowledge. And so we want to also look at how we can leverage off these platforms and learning management systems to both train our employees, but also to think about how we can engage with citizens. Chair, then lastly, issues of site visits and technology platforms, and to increase our coverage in remote areas using technology platforms. we are able to now have this meeting from, I'm sure we are spread out across the country. We should be able to use these and have virtual imbizos and talk to citizens on technology platforms. And more we are starting to see those departments that are far ahead on the curve do that through webinars and through other platforms. But I think the policy framework will then start to talk about how we can institutionalize this and start to popularize this in the public service. Chair, then as I come to a close, we talk about implementation. Even though we are talking about a policy framework and high-level policies and strategic direction that we need to give, we have to be able to identify the interventions. We have to be able to identify who's responsible. And let me also indicate, Chair, that this policy framework, it's a framework for the public service. So while we talk about interventions in here, they are not necessarily interventions that DPSA itself will implement, but there will be the DCDT, there will be the presidency, there will be CETA and other agencies that must play its role in terms of making sure that the policy framework is implemented. And we've identified some of the priority areas. This is not the definitive list, it's just an example, Chair. But in terms of connectivity, for instance, the approach is to say, how do we then use the existing funding, the existing programs in government? SA Connect is a project that is looking at improving connectivity, both for the citizen in terms of creating Wi-Fi hotspots for citizens in underserviced areas, but also in terms of connecting schools and hospitals and government service points. So we look in the policy framework for the intersection between the public service and that, and how we can fast track and support that work. We also look at the access to government data, and I've spoken about the open data policies and open data portals that must be developed to support the open data policies. And then, of course, policies around emerging technologies and developing policies and guidelines. And one of the examples there is the use of artificial intelligence, or AI. I think we all would be exposed. I think if I look even on the Zoom meeting, there's an AI companion. There's a button called AI companion on the Zoom meeting that will assist us today in translating, in transcribing the meeting and doing certain things. So public servants are exposed to it. Citizens are exposed to it. As government, we need to have a policy in place to be able to secure our data and to secure our systems, but also to give public servants the required tools that exist in 2024, be able to do their work better and smarter. So one of the things we want to do in the next financial year, as an example, even before we pull the trigger on the policy framework, Chair, is to look at AI guidelines in the public service and how we can start to create some level of confidence for public servants that they can use tools in a responsible manner, but also not put government at risk. Okay, Jen, lastly, the progress made thus far. We've consulted far and wide. We've consulted specifically with the DCDT because they are a strategic partner. We take direction from a country perspective from the DCDT in terms of digitalization. So we've had many working sessions with officials from the DCDT to look at the nuts and bolts of what we are saying, to look at how we can integrate their policy work and take direction from their policy work so that we do not move in different directions. And so I'm pleased to say and to report, Chair, that the working relationship between the DCDT and ourselves is quite positive, and we work quite closely, both as in a bilateral sense, but also through the Council of CIOs or Council of GTOs, the GTO Council, where the DCDT and CETA and all government departments actually come together. We've presented the policy framework, of course, internally to our own portfolio, but also to Treasury, the Minister of Finance, and the Minister and the Presidency, not to the President, of course, at this point. We've presented the policy framework to the portfolio committee, this portfolio committee previously, and so we come here with an update. We've consulted stakeholders across government and the private sector. Chair, I can indicate that we've gone to consulting houses, the likes of Accenture, etc., and we've said to them, critique our document and take it apart and really be hard with us because we want to get it right. And they've done so, and we've brought in some of the thinking from the private sector in the policy framework as well. And we've revised and incorporated the versions. I think we're on version 4 now, if I'm not mistaken, Chair. Then to wrap up in terms of the next steps, of course, we are presenting here today to the portfolio committee for your noting and for your guidance. We will take the policy framework back to the IMC. The interministerial committee must endorse this policy framework. It must buy into it, and it must accept that it must lead this work. We want to publish the policy framework for public comment in keeping with the spirit of the policy framework that talks about being interactive with our citizens and co-creating the solutions, I think it would only be proper that we then go to the citizens and say, this is the government plan. And so we'll publish it, we'll gazette it for public comment. And then we seek to finalize the policy framework towards the middle of the next financial year, and then move into implementation. Chair, I thank you for the opportunity to present.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zaid. Honorable members, we have listened to the two presentations of the Public Service Commission and the departments, and now I'm taking hands of honorable members for questions. If there are questions, comments, I will start with Honorable Kibi, followed by Honorable Komane, Honorable Notnachal, Honorable Nkhweng, and then Honorable Ntuli. Honorable Kibi, Honorable Komane, Honorable Notnachal, Honorable Nkhweng, Ntuli, and Honorable Maneki.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Good morning to your good selves. Good morning to the Deputy Minister, the Commissioners and Deputy Commissioner with us here, and to the Honorable Members and everybody on the platform. Honorable Chair, let me once more welcome the two presentations by the department and the PSC. Honorable Chair, I have one question for the department and only one for the PSC as well. To the department, Honorable Chair, what measures are required to ensure a comprehensive government-wide implementation of digital transformation measures that address the reskilling of current workers, Honorable Chair? And now for the PSC, since the portfolio committee requested the PSC to develop its own tool as the basis for scrutinizing and testing the validity of the appointments made on an annual basis by the public service, is the PSC only dependent on the tool to be developed by the DPSA and the DPME? Why not develop your own terms of reference and guidelines to determine the validity of appointments? Those are my two questions, Honorable Chair, and I
Thank you, Honorable Kibi. Honorable Komane.
Thank you once more, Chair, and good morning to honorable members and everybody on the platform. Chair, let us first acknowledge the two presentations, and over and above, Chair, we compliment the PSC for always striving and ensuring that when the portfolio committee has called upon them to come and give the presentation, they do their best endeavors to always be represented with a full complement. And for that, we need to commend them. And Chair, having said that, I think my first question to the PSC is mostly attached to this question that was raised by the latter speaker, because Chair, if PSC, hence we have requested them to develop their own tools, I think the rationale behind that was for them because they are an independent entity, Chair, so that they can develop their own terms of reference so that it gives them guidance on to how they're going to attend to their matters. But be it as it may, Chair, on slide number 6, bullet point number 4, does that mean the PSC is independent, is dependent on the DPSA and not like doing its things independently so that it can investigate, recommend to the DPSA? But then what would then be, and how would they be doing their things if they are dependent on what is developed by the DPSA? Chair, we acknowledge that they are working together, but we think that the PSC should have their own, they should implement their own things. Chair, to the DPSA, one would then ask Uguti, are all the departments implementing the norms and standards of the revised Public Service Corporate Governance of ICT framework? And then, if no, what percentage is still needed for the buy-in of the other into the framework by other departments, and maybe all the challenges faced by those departments in implementing such? And the last question to the DPSA Chair, it is in terms of the citizens' access to the digital service. One would then ask, because we are living in an under the government of high unemployment, we've got serious issues of particularly connectivity in rural and remote areas. So how will all citizens get access to digital services, especially in those that I spoke to, particularly the remote rural areas, without having to travel to town if they don't have the data, to access those digital services? And again, are all public service offices installed with the Wi-Fi services so that maybe it can perhaps maybe assist in the community, the citizens accessing the data? And thank you very much for now.
Thank you very much, Honorable Komane. Honorable Notnachal. Honorable Notnachal.
Good morning and thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. There's just one question that I would like to ask because I've been covered with all the other questions already. So my question is going to be to the following, to PSA, cyber. Sorry, just want to make sure my connectivity is right. Cyber security is a key threat that evolves with time. According to the department, does the government have a robust cyber security system? Thank you, Chair. That will be my question.
Honorable Ngweng.
Yeah, thank you very much, Honorable Chair, and good morning to all the members. Yes, noting that the artificial intelligence and machine learning are very key development and capabilities that can enhance several state service provisions functions. So my question will be that what underpinning principles should be considered when adopting such technologies, which can be coded in an discriminative manner, if not ethically defined? That will be my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Ntuli.
Thank you, Chairperson. Greetings to everyone on the platform, and all the protocol is observed. Chair, in terms of PSC, we commend them for establishing the systems for establishing the systems for change, but I'm also covered by the previous speakers in terms of the independence of the PSC in this regard. Remember, as the portfolio committee, we were very much concerned that the PSC would do a good job, but at the end of the day, when the departments are supposed to implement, they would not take it serious as the PSC has done. Chairperson, in terms of the department, we also commend the department for all the good work that they are doing, and also by putting the country on the map in terms of the 4th IR. But one would also check to say adopting an e-government solution requires clear design principles which should respond to the context of our country. What design principles should be upheld by the government? Thank you, Chair, having been covered by my colleagues in some of the questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ntuli. Honorable Maneli.
Thank you, Chairperson, and good day to everybody on the platform. Chairperson, I think the e-government strategy was developed in 2012. I just want to check as to what is the progress of implementing that strategy, and also to what extent has the 3 spheres of government progressed around that. Chairperson, my other question would be around the issues of cybersecurity. I think in terms of the department, they've designed this. So since they've designed this cybersecurity framework, have they experienced any attacks? And if there were such attacks, how did they then resolve them? And what would have been the cost involved in such? Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Maneli. One question to the department. As we all understand that innovation is ongoing, but however, the government has to continually develop instruments that foster a culture that embraces innovation. I think Mr. Zaid has spoken about it on the 6 pillars. Then the government system should also enable innovation, which is critical to ensuring that e-government interventions are impactful and respond to problems of service delivery on the ground. So my question is that what is the department's observation on government systems enabling innovation rather than inhibiting innovation? That's my only question to the department. Obviously, I don't have a question to the PSC. I will first give the PSC to respond to questions, and then after the department, so that we move to our minutes, honorable members.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. We've taken note of the questions. Maybe I should start with a question from Honorable Kibi, insofar as the PSA being dependent on other departments, the DPE and DPSA. Truth be told, we're not dependent on the DPSA. If one was to look into the work that we've done for the Portfolio Committee, it emanated from a request by the Portfolio Committee. Because indeed our functions are more to deal with, in fact, the request was more at a micro level, but our responsibilities in the main tend to go much more deeper. For example, we'll deal with investigations, make assessments of what has been done by the different departments insofar as our investigations are concerned. And we have the view that more often than not, we'll have our own investigations which come at our own behest. Be that as it may, I would also request that one of my colleagues to add on to what I'm actually mentioning insofar as that aspect is concerned. Honorable Komane indicated, of course, I think it was a comment to say that they're quite, you really are appreciative of the fact that we always respond promptly as and when there are requests that come from yourselves. And indeed, our responsibilities are not to design policies. Ours is to have oversight of the policies that departments of government has and be able to ensure that we hold them accountable to what might have been raised as issues that require attention. And to that extent, we do believe that our independence is closely guarded. We guard it very jealously as enshrined in the Constitution. Our dependency on other departments is quite minimal insofar as we request information so that we can be able to carry our functions accordingly. I would hand over to my other colleagues to respond on other matters. Thanks, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Through you, Chairperson. My name is Somato Dafikeni. I do think that the three honorable members touch on what this committee has always touched on, the issue of independence. Yes, my colleague, Commissioner Mavuso, has responded to it. But I do think that it triggers the broader reflection on the ecosystem of what would make PSC ultimately independent. One, if the PSC bill is given the same opportunity as other bills to go through, it will be one major step towards enhancing the very independence that the framers of the Constitution would have envisaged in Chapter 10, Section 196. And number two, if there is a proper implementation of the public sector reforms as well as professionalization framework. All those point in the direction of enhancing that autonomy, independence of the PSC, but not for its own sake, but as part of the greater ecosystem of ensuring effective, efficient public service that is people-centered and service-oriented. And the Portfolio Committee and Parliament in general would go a long way in assisting us answering that question if those legislative frameworks were to be assisted for implementation as priority bills, as we have always said. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chairperson. There may be an issue that is outstanding. I do believe that my DDG Sidibe has something to add insofar as some of the aspects that we may not have sufficiently answered or responded to. DDG?
Thanks, Commissioner and members. Just very briefly on the issue of are we not able to develop our own system instead of being dependent on the DPSA? The PSC is not dependent on the DPSA. We do have our own systems and procedures. Our systems around how we deal with investigations of either grievances, complaints, own accord, and so forth. The protocols on how we deal with inspections, as well as different types of research. These are properly documented to ensure that what we do has a level of consistency and rigor. But what we do largely happens at the meso and the macro level of the public service. It is only through investigations and investigations that relate to the particular conducts of individuals or units within institutions that we deal with micro-level activities. So our understanding is that the request that was raised needed the PSC to have a system that looks at the micro-level activities. Like if a department is recruiting 100 people over whatever period, we need to be able to see how those departments are doing that, whether it complies and so forth. That is the type of micro-level monitoring that the PSC is not able to deal with, because dealing with it almost puts the PSC into a space of interfering with the executive function. The DPSA, however, deals with this particular issue through regulations, policy development, and the development of tools that institutions themselves can use. And when the institutions use those tools, they, together with the PSC, at key intervals when there is a need, you're able to extract the information and use it for whatever purposes that it needs to be used at. So that is very different when we are receiving. We could be looking at recruitment and selection in a particular institution for the past 5 years. It's historic, we are reacting. But what the DPSA is putting in place in terms of its tools, it's proactive to make sure that the institutions themselves are not misinterpreting the prescripts and the processes and the procedures that they need to follow. So there is no need for PSC to develop another tool parallel to that. Not only would we be creating inefficiency in the system, but we run the risk of creating confusion. Let me give an example previously. The grievance rules in the public service were developed by the PSC, but there is a history for that. It ended up creating confusion on who has the responsibility to regulate the space between PSC and the MPSA. And over an extended period of time, including engaging with the Office of the Chief State Law Advisor, it was clarified that what PSC did then was an interim arrangement when PSC and DPSA were separated into separate institutions, but it did create confusion in the system. So there are a number of those. PSC developed a recruitment and selection tool, but that recruitment and selection tool was based on prescripts at a particular point in time. There has been so many changes introduced by the MPSA, and it cannot be the PSC that then comes and tries to reinterpret that to develop a tool. And we have had instances where there were differences of opinion in terms of what PSC interprets in terms of particular prescripts versus what the policy custodian prescribes. But members, to make sure that we are not a PSC that always comes to react, we are in constant engagement with the DPSA. So any intelligence that we are able to gather from investigations, from research, from inspections, we make sure that as they develop the legislation, they develop the regulations, the tools and so forth, we input into that, so that we do not come back later when we provide oversight and say, this was a poor tool, this was. And yes, it's not like DPSA is going to agree with us in most of the instances, but the way in which we work, we are able to contribute towards the proactive setting of systems in place, in which case it then makes sense that we come back later on and we say, are the systems working the way in which we envisaged they will work? If not, where are the challenges? And then that is how PSC then comes in to conduct the in-depth studies, so that we partly influence the review and the amendments of those particular systems. I know maybe this is not a 100% happy response, but that's how we need to separate the responsibilities to avoid an instance where PSC can be found to be putting its hands in the executive space that it needs to have oversight on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, PSC, PSA, DG.
Thank you, Chairperson. I think most of the questions are quite technical and Zaid will have to deal with them. But I just wanted to highlight two things, Chair. I think some of the questions that had been asked, if the committee had time, and I understand that it's towards the end of term, so the agenda of the committee is packed. But even in the next term, I think this is information we will bring to the committee. We've done research in two areas. One relates just to around the issue of accessibility and usage of e-government services. We've looked at all the e-government services that we have currently and what is the level of usage in respect to those services. And we could really be able to provide that research and some of the recommendations that are coming out. It's quite some detailed work that we have done over the financial year on that. The second one is just on, again, in research on the take of government departments on innovation and what innovation initiatives are taking place in departments and how is innovation positioned in government generally as an intervention. Again, there's a report that on that research, which is really not showing a good picture, but we should be able, once there is availability of time, to be able to share the detail of these reports. I think that from an oversight perspective of the committee, it's important that the committee also has access to such information. Chairperson, with your permission, I will hand over to Zaid to just go through the questions that have been raised. If there's anything else, maybe that is left out, I'll come back, but I trust that he will complete all the questions. We also have other DDGs here, especially I would like DDG Vukela to speak on the issue of Wi-Fi accessibility in government offices, and in particular our rural offices. Is that system effective from a service access point of view? It would be useful if the DDG can also give a reflection on that, as he is the DDG responsible for issues related to service access. Thank you.
Thank you, DG. With your permission, Chair. Chair, the question from Honorable Kibi, what measures are required to ensure a comprehensive plan in addressing the reskilling of current workers? So, Chair, we work on this on several fronts. As I've indicated, we in the policy framework itself, we will integrate to the work of the DCDT in terms of digitalization, digital skills development. The DCDT has launched recently a digital skills forum, and the DPSA is a part of that forum. So we'll work closely with them in terms of digital skills broadly. In terms of the current workers specifically, the human capital strategy that's being developed in the DPSA. We've identified the need for reskilling in terms of digital skills, and so we are also thinking about issues of data skills and how we can start to infuse some of these basic technology skills into public servants. We are also, Chair, we're talking to various role players around issues of capacity building. So we're talking to some of our bigger suppliers in government around how they can, as part of their corporate social responsibility, but also part of their obligations to government in terms of being able, particularly the international organizations, being able to operate in the country. They have responsibilities from a DTI perspective, and we're looking to tap into that from a capacity building perspective, to train young people, to bring them into the public service, funded and trained, of course, by some of these large IT corporates. So we are exploring a number of ways to upskill, to reskill current workers. I can assure you, Chair, that in our discussions on the human capital strategy, we are making sure that digital skills are being put front and center. We've also worked with PCTA and with Tshwane University of Technology to do some work around understanding our current skill levels, and to also think about the issue of future skills. So it's an approach. It's a multi-factorial approach, looking at different stakeholders and how we can bring it all together. But Chair, it's definitely an area, digital skilling. It's something that we will not take our eyes off and make sure that we deal with it, both from in terms of our HRM&D section in the DPSA and the work that they're doing, and also from our side in terms of the technology side. Honorable Komani, the question from your side around corporate governance of ICT policy framework and its implementation. I think you asked what percentage is still needed to implement and what are the challenges being faced. So, Chair, when we published the directive on corporate governance, we gave departments some time to implement. I think it was 12 months at the time, and that period ended in September, November last year, or meaning this financial year actually. And so our plan, Chair, is to then start a monitoring cycle in our APP, in our draft APP for the next financial year. We've put in, and the DG I think would have mentioned that we are focusing quite strongly on monitoring our directives and making sure that we can understand the implementation challenges. So that cycle will start in the new financial year. However, I can tell you, Chair, that we've had roadshows, we've had awareness sessions with most departments up to now, and so we do get some feedback from departments. The departments that really have progressed with version 1 of corporate governance, meaning they've managed to embed some level of governance from the previous version, have then found it very easy to move on to the new version and to adapt. Those that have struggled, we can see from at least from the questions and from the communication and from the discussions that there are struggles, and those struggles relate, Chair, to issues of bringing the leadership of the department closer to IT and getting them to understand the value of IT governance. And these are the fundamentals that we've dealt with in version 2. And to deal with that, Chair, we've taken the corporate governance of ICT policy framework. In fact, before it even went to Cabinet, we went to FOSAD, we went to the JISCA cluster, and we spoke to DGs. We will continue to target DGs and leadership in departments. In fact, yesterday we had a workshop with, I think there were some like 200 members in the workshop from different parts of the organization, different parts of the department, internal audit, from the IT steering committees, so non-IT people, to target creating the awareness and giving the department the responsibility from a corporate governance perspective. So I think the majority of the challenges are around getting buy-in in departments itself and not having the corporate governance being handed to the GTO or the CIO for the GTO to implement governance of him or of his or her own function, and that clearly doesn't work. So then I think you asked about access to digital services and connectivity. How will citizens get access to digital services in remote areas, particularly? And DG's alluded that the DG's GSI will also weigh in on this one. But I think SA Connect is key for us in terms of connecting up, particularly government service delivery points. And there's a clear plan in place. I think, Chair, to be frank, I think issues of funding are the biggest problem that we have, followed then, of course, by issues of coverage. So, Chair, you'll recognize that, or at least let me say that service providers typically don't want to go to underserviced areas unless it makes clear business sense for them. And I think the DCDT is working with service providers to look at how we can leverage off the Universal Service Access Fund for service providers that have created the fund as part of being granted the license, how we can tap into that to fund connectivity for underserviced areas. I do know as well that that Wi-Fi hotspots are being prioritized in the current plan or in the current wave from a SA Connect perspective. So largely it's being driven by the DCDT, being supported by the DPSA, of course, together with all of the individual departments and the CIOs and GTOs from those departments with information and coordination. But of course, access will always be a problem, Chair. I think also I should mention that the benefit of digitalization is not only relating to the citizen being able to access the service easily, but it's also about the efficiencies of the process that digitalization brings. So when a business process is digitalized, not only does it make the service accessible to the end user, it also then creates efficiencies internally in the process. So what was manual and paper-based in terms of processing previously now becomes systematized and becomes more efficient and faster. So I think while we deal with the issue of access, there's still a business case for digitalization and making sure that we gain those efficiencies in the process itself. Of course, being able to do more with the machine rather than the human having to manually process. Chair, then moving on, Honorable Notnagel, sorry, the cybersecurity being a key threat. Does government have a robust cybersecurity system? I think, Chair, it's a complex question that's been framed, or the answer is complex in that from a cybersecurity perspective, we will never be robust enough, and we will never be there. So I don't think any organization, whether it's the banks or whether it's government, can rest that they have a robust cybersecurity system, because it's always a question of being ahead or trying to be ahead of the criminal, and criminals are more and more starting to become more sophisticated and use cyber tools, AI tools to hack and get their way. So we have a plan in place. We have, of course, as I've indicated, we've established the ministers published the directive on information security, and that's meant to deal with the nuts and bolts issues, the basics of cybersecurity in every department. What we've been focusing on with the council, the Digital Council, and in partnership with CETA in the last financial year, Chair and honourable members, is an assessment of the cybersecurity posture of each department. So we have planned, and I think we've done 99 or 98% of departments up to now. We have gone into each department. We've done an independent assessment of where they are from a cybersecurity perspective, and we will then collate that data and study it and make sure that we can then target interventions for those departments that have not moved, and to also then share and take learnings from those departments that have moved. Chair, in this space of cybersecurity, capacity is a constraint and a problem. And it relates to just government being able to attract these really, really expensive cybersecurity officials. So we are looking at strategies of how we can capacitate departments, whether that's through CETA, or whether that's through some of the other initiatives I mentioned previously. We're having discussions with donors and with other companies that want to play in the space to look at how we can create capacity in departments. And the challenge there, Chair, is warm bodies with the skills. I'm not sure which honourable member, I didn't get the name, that asked the question around around AI and what principles should be considered when adopting technologies. Chair, we want to start off with looking at, of course, we don't have an AI policy in place, and there are discussions between ourselves and the DCDT, and there's work that's been happening at the country level from an AI perspective, and we will learn from that, we will take from that. I've also mentioned that we will look at some guidelines in the next financial year around AI. So we haven't really gone into the space and developed policy around that. But I can indicate that from a policy framework perspective, it's important for us to think about transparency. And so as we deploy AI and it replaces the human in terms of specific tasks, we must make sure that it's transparent in the way that it does it, and we are always able to understand what the machine is doing. We must make sure that we are impartial. And that means that when we deploy AI and use AI for a business process, that it does not discriminate at any point. We must make sure that when we design and deploy AI, that we can still be accountable for how the AI is being used, and that can never be given over to the machine. Of course, the AI must be reliable. It must be scalable. Of course, it must be secure, and we must ensure, Chair, that the data, citizen data, government data is not compromised when we are using some of these cloud AI tools. And so security and privacy are also some of the other principles that we'd like to mention on that. Then, Chair, moving on, Honorable Ntuli, you asked about e-government solution, or you mentioned that e-government solution requires clear design principles, and you're 100% correct on that. And what design principles should be upheld? I think we start, Honourable Chair and Honourable Members, with the Batupele principles, and I think we would have mentioned it in the policy framework itself, that it must, whatever we do must be based on the Batupele principles of consultation. So you will see the parallels then when I spoke about the pillars and how it's important to consult in the design of digital systems. That there must be standards in place, and that's the role of the DPSA or MPSA, to develop standards for digital technologies that get deployed, so that we can have a common experience from a citizen and a business perspective. That we must look at issues of redress and access. I've spoken about access. Also, access to information, and this links quite nicely with open the principle of open data that we speak about in the policy framework. And then, of course, openness and transparency. I think I've spoken about it, and value for money is key, Chair, in everything that we do, and that is why we've selected to pull the trigger on the corporate governance of ICT policy framework, even before we finalized the broader digital government policy framework. Because without those fundamental principles being in place of value for money, meaning when we spend money on technology, it must meet its objective and it must add value. Chair, those are the broad particular principles that we hook into and we take from. But of course, there are specific design principles from a technology perspective, and those align a bit with Batupele, but perhaps they differ as well. I'll just mention them quickly. Some of them, of course, starting with the needs of the user. So I spoke about the user designed in our approach. We must be able to design with data. Data must be the center of our design. We must be able to keep it simple, and we must be able to reuse. We must be able to understand the context within which that service is being delivered. And of course, we must make sure that we open up access in that way. So I think, Chair, the issue of design, it exists at various levels. Of course, there are technology design principles that we will then fuse and integrate with the something like the minimum interoperability standards. That's something within the regulations that the minister is required to issue, and we have ongoing versions that we refine, and we'll continue to refine the MIOS to look at those specific technical designs. And of course, there are broader design principles linked to Batupele. Chair, Honorable Manele, you asked about the progress of implementing the e-government strategy. And I think we touched on it a little bit in the presentation to say that since 2012, since the development of the early policies, there has been movement. We can say that we have a connected government today in terms of the back end and in terms of every government department. We can say that we have centralized on some of our key financial and human resource platforms, even though, Chair, they have their challenges. And I think when we look globally, many governments are struggling to actually get that integrated backend that we have in place as a basis to be able to move forward. We can also see, coming to more recent examples, I think the Department of Home Affairs has done well in being able, in giving citizens the ability to apply online end-to-end for certain services. To be able to utilize some of these partnership models with the banks, I think it's added a lot of value to the service. We know about the SARS examples. We won't talk about that. That's fully automated. We can talk about the Department of Labor. We can talk about in the transport sector, Chair, that we are now able to sit behind the computer at our desks and renew our licenses end-to-end and have it delivered to our doorstep without even talking to a government official. And that is progress for me, and that is an example of how we can proceed. I will talk lastly, Chair, about the e-services platform. I think we have somewhere around 170 services that have been published on there. I personally used one of those services the other day to get a copy of one of the certificates that I have, and I can testify that it actually works. So, of course, there are challenges, but I think we've progressed in a number of different areas. That's not to say that we are where we need to be. I think many departments have not been able to digitalize some of their core processes, which are still manual and paper-based. And I think also from an integration perspective, I think this is where we are lacking behind. We've not been able to integrate our services for the citizen convenience. We are still siloized in the way that we deliver services. And of course, that is reliant on not necessarily on the technology, but all of the different components to work together across government to be able to succeed. And we are looking at strategies of how we can use, for instance, the cluster systems and restructure the way we work for instance, even in the Government IT Council. We've had an AGM and a strategic planning session a few days ago, and what we're considering is how we can structure ourselves around the cluster system to improve and focus specifically, not so much on the technology, but on the integration of the services. The question on cyber attacks, around have there been cyber attacks for the department? Not from a DPSA perspective. I think we've done very well internally in the DPSA in terms of securing our systems. But we all know it's in the news, Chair and honourable members, that there are some government agencies specifically and departments that would have been attacked. I think it's more agencies than departments at this point. And so we have to be vigilant. There are bodies in place through the SSA in partnership with the DCDT and ourselves that look at cyber attacks, that look at what needs to be done to deal with issues of cyber attacks. Over and above, Chair, what I've already spoken about in terms of the foundational elements that we are responsible for in terms of departments and IT and what they do to enable that. So it's again a multi-pronged approach to deal with cyber attacks. From a cost perspective, we don't have a study in place that can quantify that at this point. But I think it's something we can, in our research agenda, we can think about how we then focus on cybersecurity. I think it's a valuable recommendation or question that gives rise to that. And through you, DG, I think we can also think about how we can improve on our research from a cybersecurity perspective in the public service. Chairperson, then coming to your questions around innovation and instruments that foster the culture of innovation. Of course, we need to make sure that they're impactful and respond to the problems of service delivery. I think the DG's touched on a study that we've done. We are busy finalizing, let me say, on innovation. We recognize that it's an area that we've not necessarily excelled in the DPSA, and we needed to press the accelerator, so to speak, on that in that front. So we've undertaken a research study around innovation to unpack what are the challenges in departments in terms of innovation. What are departments doing? What is the legislation saying? What are some of the issues arising out of legislation? For instance, in the PFMA, I think there's the PFMA cited as one of the issues that one of the pieces of legislation that is, at least in the way that it's interpreted and implemented, it stifles innovation. And so we need to look at some of those things. Chair, your question was around any observations that we have around systems enabling rather than inhibiting innovation. I think more often than not, the systems that we've seen deployed, of course, enables innovation in the sense that it allows us to do things in a different way. It allows us to adopt new methods and new technologies. And inherently, in developing systems and deploying systems, it does require businesses to think in an innovative way and to abandon the old ways of doing things and adopt new ways of doing things. So I think as we deploy technology, it is forcing branches in departments, units in departments, public service officials themselves to think in a different way, to use a system thinking and design thinking in their approaches. So I think we'll proceed on that basis in terms of fast-tracking digital deployment, but also looking at the research and how that research then moves into policy development around innovation, and what are the things that we can do at a practical level to make sure that innovation happens at the coalface of service delivery, but also in the back end in terms of every public servant, and their agenda the agenda of every public servant should be an innovative agenda. Chair, I hope I've covered all of the questions and I've responded adequately. Let me give it back to the DG. Sorry, DG, I think you had asked DG Vukela to also come in if there is anything. Over to you.
DG Vukela, do you have any comments? Chair, it seems that DG Vukela is not communicating with us. I'm going to hand it back to you. In any case, I think all the questions have been answered. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, DG. And once more, thank you very much to yourself and your team. And also, thank you very much to the PSC led by the chair and the deputy chair. Now that is the end of all your presentation, and you are released. Will remain, honorable members, just to finish the 3 sets of minutes of this committee. Thank you very much to all of you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Chair, can I proceed to you?
Yes, Mercy. Minutes.
Thanks. Good morning to you and good morning to honorable members, Chair. Today we've about our 3 sets of minutes. I'm on the minutes of the 15th of November 2023, Chair. Once again, these minutes were sent last week to members just to have a look at them. And then if they have any amendments, and then they can advise accordingly, Chair. I'm on page 1, Chair. I'm on page 2. I'm on page 3. The committee was dealing with the bill, Chair, the 2 bills. We also adopted some minutes, Chair. I'm on page 4. That's the last page, Chair. Those are the minutes of the 15th of November 2023, Chair.
Honorable members, if you have also, in your spare time, read the minutes of the 15th November 2023, and is there any issues on the minutes, honorable members, if you want to edit or delete in the minutes of the 15th November? I see 2 hands. Honorable Nduli, followed by Honorable Kibi.
Honorable Chairperson, I don't have any amendments in these minutes. I only want to move for the adoption.
Thank you, Honorable Nduli. Honorable Kibi.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I second the mover by Honorable Nduli for the minutes of the 15th of November. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. The minutes of the 15th of November 2023 have been adopted, honorable members. We're moving to the minutes of the 22nd November 2023, honorable members.
Yes, Chair, I'm on page 1. We did receive some reports on the PSC handbook on the day. I'm on page 1, Chair. Page 2. That's page 3, Chair. Discussion of the committee, page 4. And also on the day we adopted some minutes, Chair. So I'm on the last page. These are the minutes of the 22nd, Chair, November 2023.
Thank you very much, Mercy. Honorable members, the minutes of the 22nd November, the presentation of the DPSC and also the PSC handbook, and obvious the achievements by the department. I'm taking hands, Honorable Kibi, and then I see the hand of Honorable Nduli.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I move for the acceptance of the minutes of the 22nd of November as presented to us. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Nduli.
Thank you, Chairperson. I move. I second the movement of the minutes of the 22nd by Honorable Kibi.
Thank you very much, Honorable Nduli. The minutes of the 22nd November 2023 has been adopted and also seconded as the true reflection of that day. Thank you. The minutes now of the 14th February 2024.
Yes, Chairperson. On this day, we were adopting the reports, and we are also adopting the bills so that they can be processed accordingly, Chair. I'm on page 1. Page 2. Page 3. brief discussion of the committee. Page 4, Chair. That's the last page, Chair. Minutes of the 14th February 2024.
Thank you very much, Masi. Honorable members, the minutes of the 14th February 2024 on the Valentine's Day, there was an adoption of the reports and the two bills to be processed by Parliament. Honorable members, any issues on these minutes? I'm then taking hands. I see two hands, Honorable Ntuli and Honorable Kiwi.
Chairperson, I move for the adoption of the minutes of the Valentine's Day, which is 14th Feb. Yes, Chair. Move for the adoption of the minutes.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ntuli. Honorable Kiwi.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I second the move by Honorable Ntuli on the minutes of the 14th of February. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ntuli and Honorable Kibi. The minutes of the 14th February 2024, when the bills were adopted and the report to be processed by Parliament, and of which they've been processed, honorable members now they've been Lantika approved by this portfolio committee. Anything else, Masi?
That's all, Chair. That's all. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. Thank you very much, honorable members. Thank you very much to our progressive team of this portfolio committee and all colleagues. The minutes of the three sets of minutes have been duly adopted by this portfolio committee. And thank you very much. The time now, it's 11:36. And the meeting of this committee has been adjourned. And thank you very much to all of you.
Thank
Malbongo. Thank you, Chair.
Recording stopped.